This is a follow-up from a story I know I covered a while back. So I'm going to summarize what I talked about before, and I'll give you the update here. There was a church in Canada known as the Meeting House Church. And it was led by this guy in your picture. His name is Bruxy Cavey. He's one of those cool, hip pastors, and you could tell he's cool because he's not wearing a suit, and he's wearing a hat, and he has long hair. And yeah, I know you see this. He has a tattoo of Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28, which, of course, is the verse that says, thou shalt not have any tattoos. I paraphrase. But that's how hip and edgy he is. He'll show God who's boss. Okay, so Bruxy Cavey used to be the head of this church, the Meeting House. It was one of those churches that said, we're a church for people who are not into church because we're the cool church. And it appealed to a lot of people. At one point, it was known as he was known as Ontario's most influential pastor. And this guy was in charge of that church back in like 1997, and he ran it for decades, right? It became one of the largest vessels in the province for spreading Christianity. And the thing I talked about a couple of months ago is that this guy got in trouble in 2021. Here's a story from 2022 from the CBC, because this guy, Hamilton police charge former pastor of the Meeting House Church with sexual assault. Police believe there may be multiple victims. Yeah, so basically the head of this church was accused of sexually assaulting multiple people. The Meeting House soon hired someone to do an internal investigation, and she substantiated the claims of sexual abuse. In one case, she even said the alleged victim was underage. So very, very disturbing story for all these reasons. Bruxy Cavey is going to go on trial. I don't know if the trial has started yet, but he's supposed to go on trial very soon. He maintains that he is innocent. But there's a lot of lawsuits against the church. The lawsuits are seeking millions of dollars in damages. I think the independent advocate that the church hired, said there were ultimately 38 allegations of sexual misconduct against not just this guy, Bruxy Cavey, but 3 other pastors who worked at this place. That's how bad things were. Anyway, all of this happens. Church leaders keep insisting we changed our ways, created a new system to handle allegations. But now, and the reason I want to bring this up here is because there's an update to the church. Because they actually sent out an email to their supporters recently, and I want to show you this email. This is from like last week or maybe a couple weeks ago now. But basically, they sent out this email to their congregation saying they're shutting down temporarily, but they're just shutting down everything. And wait till you hear the reason that they've decided to close up shop. Because they said no weekend services anymore, no Sunday school, even like small groups where you might meet at somebody's house to discuss topics. We're not doing that either. The church is not sponsoring small groups, church gatherings, anything like that. Why not? Let me show you. If you scroll down here, our current insurer has advised us that they will be renewing our abuse liability and employment practices liability coverage as of June 30th, 2024. After an exhaustive search, most other insurers have declined to offer us this coverage. It is not responsible for us to continue to operate normal church activities without abuse liability and employment practices liability coverage. Just sit with that for a second. This church had insurance for sexual abuse, and their insurance provider basically said, we can't cover you anymore because you're like costing us way too much money. There's too much abuse going on, and it's just a drain on us, so we can't do this anymore. And because the church isn't getting sexual abuse insurance coverage, instead of just saying, well, maybe we just don't abuse people, they're like, you guys, we need to shut down the entire thing Because what if abuse happens and we don't have insurance for it? That is actually the mindset. The Christian Post did a story about this. Look at their headline. The meeting house megachurch temporarily shuttered because it can't get abuse insurance. Like, even the Christian Post is dunking on this church for good reason, because this is a very real thing that is happening. Unbelievable. Imagine your car insurance company says, we can't give you coverage because every time you drive on the road, you get an offender bender. Every time. At some point, they could obviously say, like, we're just going to raise your premium because we have to deal with you all the time. And the insurance company isn't saying you guys got to pay a lot more money. No, they're skipping right ahead to, there's no amount of money that's going to make this a good business decision for us. We're just not going to deal with you anymore. That's how bad things are at this church. And I want to go back to the email that the church sent to people. Because again, remember, they said, not only has our insurance provider said they can't work with us, we checked with all the other insurance providers for abuse coverage, and none of them wanted to work with us. And look at this. They say, like, we've totally tried to stop the abuse, but despite these positive changes, we are disappointed to learn that our history still causes insurers to view us as a significant go-forward risk. At this point, we are confident that we have engaged all the available insurers in Canada and some internationally who work with churches. However, we have learned in the last week that our search has not identified any insurers yet willing to provide the meeting house with abuse liability coverage. They can't find anyone to cover them because of this stuff. One last thing they say in this email: for the protection of our staff, volunteers, vulnerable people, including kids and youth, and our wider church community, our transition board and network leadership team believe it is not responsible to continue engaging in ministry work through the Meeting House Church entity without full insurance coverage. Which, I'm glad they figured that out. Part of me wants to say, yes, this is the responsible thing for them to do. Like, good for you for saying, we don't want anyone to be in a situation that could end badly. And without the insurance, we cannot guarantee that there's going to be justice. So we're just going to close shop until we could get this insurance. Part of me wants to give them credit for that. But also, that's like thanking a serial killer for taking a night off. You do not, under any circumstances, have to hand it to them, right? There's one other thing I wanted to show you, because the church also put out an FAQ for church members. And look at this. Look at the first question in the FAQ. Is the meeting house shutting down on June 30th? And they say, no, we're not shutting down. We're just pausing for a while until we find insurance. Okay, fine. We've gone over that. But look at this. Can I continue giving money to the meeting house while we're on a pause? What would my giving go towards? And they're like, yes, exclamation point. We will totally take your money. Sure, we're not meeting. Sure, there's no Sunday school. There's no small group meetings, but we're totally going to take your cash if you want to give us cash. If that isn't more quintessentially church shit, I don't know what is. Christianity Today actually spoke with the head of a Christian church insurance provider, and they're like, so what do you think about all this stuff going on here? And I want to show you what that insurance provider said, because he explained why insurers may not want to work with this church anymore. Insurers may decline to provide liability coverage for ministries that don't have solid policies to handle abuse, according to this guy who works with a company that insures more than 4,000 ministries in California. To him, it's a stewardship issue. Other churches' premiums shouldn't be spent covering another organization's repeated mistakes. If there's been a pattern of abuse, et cetera, every time there's a claim, it's going back to these offering plates at other ministries. All of which is to say, one church in Canada was doing so much abuse, and the insurance premiums would have been so high that it eventually would have spread to everyone else who needs insurance for sexual abuse, all the other churches. And they're all like, dude, why do my premiums have to go up? Because this one church can't get its act together. And so this dude is saying, yeah, I get why they would cut them off. It totally makes sense. It is wild that this is a thing. Like, it's not even non-Christians like me saying the church's revised policies are still not good, enough. Because in fact, remember I said they hired an advocate to do like independent investigation into their problem. Well, guess what? They fired her eventually, or they pushed her out, and they said, we got our own system in place now. We don't need you. And the person they hired was like, you guys, your new system is not good. Like, it doesn't guarantee anonymity in the right way. It doesn't do enough. And they're like, whatever, we don't need you. And yeah, now the insurers don't want to work with them. Like, all of this, these are other Christians saying it's gone too far, and the church still isn't taking the problem seriously enough. What a fall from grace for a church that used to draw in like 5,700 people every weekend as of like 2018 to about 1,500 now. That's what their attendance has dropped to, and I'm sure it's dropping even more. So I think all of this is a clear sign that what was going on at the meeting church, it was never about one pastor. It was never about a few bad apples. Like, the entire church was and remains the problem, because the current leaders are clearly not up to the task of doing the job, and the people in the pews aren't putting enough pressure on them to do the right thing. And I would also go so far as to say, if you still attend that church and you give it money and you grant it legitimacy, you're sending the message that you don't give a damn about the victims either. So if pausing means those people are going to leave the church and stop giving it money, good, that's a win-win for everybody. But I'm still laughing at the idea that this church had to shut down because they couldn't find sex abuse insurance. All right, I'm going to pause there for that story. What else is there to talk about? What questions we got? Do all churches have to have abuse liability insurance? I bet they do. This is something I couldn't get an answer to. I looked for that answer because I didn't know that all churches needed that insurance. I'm sure all churches have insurance for the same reason homeowners might have homeowners insurance. It covers a lot of specifics, and usually the specifics don't matter. You just want to be protected in case of an emergency. But I realize if you're a church, not only do you need like property insurance, you might need now like insurance that covers the pastor who's playing with kids or something. So I would suspect a lot of churches have this insurance. It's just not a thing anyone needs to think about, you would hope. Why does the meeting house give me multi-level marketing? Is that what it is? Yeah, vibes. Just off the logo, I get heavy LuLaRoe knockoff pheromones. Yeah, they're so generic with their naming that it sounds like every every yoga pants or face cream business, and all these pastors think they are their own boss. No accountability. Regular citizens can't get decent dental insurance coverage, but these people can get insurance for something like that? What? No kidding. No kidding. There's no like Obamacare for sexual abuse coverage for churches. Weird, I hate insurance companies, but refusing insurance to people may help. Refusing flood and fire may wake people up too, but this is wild to me. I was thinking about, Keith, I was thinking about Florida, where so many of the homes, property owners, need insurance for their properties. Why? Because of climate change and because of the weather being so bad. And the premiums are getting so high for so many people that it's becoming unaffordable, to the point that, and I could be wrong here, I think Florida had to create its own state-run insurance program to try to cover people, because private insurers were like, yeah, this is getting out of hand and we can't cover because all of you are dealing with the same problem and we can't keep in business because of this stuff. Oh man. Has Hemant ever trolled us and talked about how this pastor got in legal trouble recently, and we're all thinking it's sexual assault, but it's something like tax fraud? I'm trying to think of if that has happened. I mean, that's a great idea. I'll think about that in the future.